מקשר עצמי לכל הצדיקים אמיתים שתבנו וכל הצדיקים אמיתים שוכני עפר קדוש ובשבר הארץ המה. הוא יבחר לרבנו הקדוש צדיק יסוד עולם נחנו ומקור חוכמה רבנו נחמן פייגן הצמחה. נחמן אומן זכותו תגן עלינו והכל ישראל עלינו. So, we talked about אריכות ימים, זקנות, תיקוני עתיק, and through all these ideas, a person merits ashirut, wealth. And then we talked about Yira. We entered the subject of Yira, that the only way to attain true Arichot Yamim is through the midah of Yirat Shamayim. Yirat HaRonut. Fear of God's exaltedness. So, we said earlier, for fear protects a person from the opposite of wealth. The anu aniyut, which is poverty. Fear is the midah which prevents a person from falling into aniyut, poverty. And what does aniyut come from? Where does poverty come from? The pasuk in Mishle, sheker achen, false is grace, the hevel ayofi, and vain is beauty. Now what does that have to do with fear? Now Rabbeinu is going to enter the subject right now. And what it says at the end of the pasuk, yirat Hashem mititara, fear of Hashem shall be praised, shall be praiseworthy. That what? Yira is the opposite of sheker achen and hevel ayofi, right? That we're going to see right now. False beauty, vain beauty, sheker achen, and false grace is what prevents a person from attaining ashirut, holy wealth. And therefore, yira is what protects you and what protects your wealth. So, let's see how Rabbeinu gets into it. Ki. You want to kick us off?
Yeah,
Kiyesh.
כי יש כמה מיני חן של שקר שעושים בעמידה ובאכילה ובדיבורו עם האנשים וכן בשאר דברים ולכל דבר יש חן אחר מיוחד.
So, there are many types of chen shel sheker, false grace. שעושים בעמידה ובאכילה ובדיבורו עם האנשים, that a person does when he's standing, maybe gestures of grace, for example, false grace, like you maybe make a movement with your hand that suggests that you have arrogance, that's a false grace, or that you are someone that you're not who you are really, or when you eat, or well, as you speak with people, pretending to speak in a different fashion, perhaps. False grace. All types of being like a charlatan. Presenting a colorful outside or a different color than you, who you are inside. And other aspects also. This is true about other things as well. And for example, you want to sell a product. Maybe you present a false grace to the customer. So you know what I mean? They are all things of false grace. And everything in the world is a specific chen that is unique to it, a specific grace that is unique to it. As we just explained. So, v'chol.
וכל אלו החינות של שקר הם באים על ידי ההבל היופי בבחינה. שקר אכן הבל היופי, דהיינו מי שאינו נשמר מיופי אנשים, על ידי זה יש לו תאוות של אלו החינות של שקר. ויראה הוא...
Yeah, but stop there 1 second. So, all these types of false grace come through the fact, or come through what we call hevel hayofi, vain beauty, right? That beauty is vain, right? As it says in the pasuk, sheker achen, false is grace, hevel hayofi, and beauty is vain. That what? Rabbeinu is saying that this false chen comes from what we call hevel hayofi. Okay? Beauty being like a physical beauty, but that not obviously being vain, and it's not important. What does Rabbeinu say? What is all this talk? What is he all talking about? What practically is he speaking about? Mi she'eno nishmar mi yofi anashim, one who does not guard himself from a woman's beauty. Meaning, when he puts too much value on the physicality or the beauty of a woman, this is what makes him fall into chinot shel sheker. False grace. Al yedei, when he falls into a woman's beauty, God forbid, he has ta'avot for all these false types of grace. And to fulfill them, to do them, to present himself differently in front of people, to perhaps conduct himself in a way differently. Because after the fact that now that he's fallen after this yofi, which is the chitzoni, the external aspect of a woman, even though it's sheker and hevel, and he's not really paying attention, he's not looking at the good qualities of a woman, which is the primiyut, the yirat shamayim, all these things. When he falls into this false beauty, he therefore raises himself into this concept of chen shel sheker, false grace. and he's drawn towards it. And then all his actions will be with this chen shel sheker, that meaning that it's not emet. You're creating a false exterior, someone totally different. Because it's all about the exterior here. You're focusing on the exterior. You too, in yourself, will have to present yourself in a very different external fashion to present a false grace so that you act differently, so that you can impress someone or whatever it might be, for whatever reason. And now Rabbeinu is going to explain and we'll finish off with this line. That way we can understand the entire subject.
יראה הוא הפך מזה, כמו שכתוב, שקר כן הבל היופי, ישר יראה השם היא התעלה. ועל כן אברהם יצחק ויעקב שבאו למקומות שלא היו שם יראות, ותכף כשרצו לכנוס לשם יגרשו זאת על ידי שהתחילו להרגיש לפי ערך גדול קדושתם לפי אנשים, ועל כן יגרשו שאין שם ירן, על כן אסרו על עצמן זיווג נשותיהן כאחותו, כמו שכתוב, כי אמרתי רק אין ירד אלוקים במקום הזה וכו'.
Amazing subject Rabbeinu is explaining now. Yira is going to be the opposite of now Rabbeinu is saying the structure is like this. Okay, you fall into Yofi Anashim, God forbid, the desire for a beautiful woman, meaning that you put too much value on the external, the beauty of a woman. Chad v'shalom, what ends up happening because of this is you end up falling into Chinot Shel Sheker, false grace. That's the opposite of fear. Rabbeinu is saying that Yirah protects a person from this. That true Yirat Shamayim is actually going to protect you from false beauty. Not to put too much attention on that. Chitzon Yud Chad v'shalom. As it says, Sheker Achem ve'Avel Isha Yirat Hashem ititala. What is really praiseworthy is a woman's Yirat Shamayim, her Yirah. So the pasuk is giving us an etzah how to save yourself from Sheker Achem ve'Avel not to be drawn after it. And how is that? Yirat Shamayim. So through Yirat Shamayim, one merits to distance himself from woman's beauty. When he does that, he distances himself from Chen Shel Sheker. Right? And through this, what do you call it? What we said earlier, through this Yofi Anashim, or through this Chen Shel Sheker, what ends up happening to a person is he falls into Ani, poverty. So what is Rabbeinu saying? Now that Yirat Shamayim, which is going to protect you from those two subjects of a woman's beauty and false grace, will protect you from poverty. Which is what? The opposite of Ashirut. Because the Ashirut we're discussing here, the wealth we're discussing here, comes from a root in Kedusha that you're able to have the Kli with the Arichut Amim, with the Yirat Shamayim, to accept that Ashirut and to attain Yitbonenut through it. Meaning it's a Kedusha, this Ashirut. Rabbeinu is saying holy wealth. Whatever wealth you have, that you possess it with holiness and that you're able to infuse that with holiness and that you're obviously your Arichut Yamim and everything associated with that Ashirut. When you fall, Chad v'Shalom, when your Yira falls, all that Ashirut falls with it. Unfortunately. And how does that Yira, Rabbeinu is saying, how does that Yira fall? When sometimes you fall into Yofi Anashim and all these things. Or Yira is maybe the domino effect of what ends up happening with all that stuff afterwards, because Yira is the source. So when you increase your Yirat Shamayim, you will distance yourself from Yofi Anashim, Sheker Achem. So let's see what he says here. Let's see what he says here. Let's see. So let's see what it means with Sheker Achem. We talk about Chinot Shel Sheker, right? False grace. Let's see what he says over here. For example, a person that eats in a certain, conducts himself in a certain fashion, he eats in front of people, or he eats in front of people in a very different way than he eats alone. For example, when he eats alone, he eats a lot, and he eats in a very...
eats with his hands.
Yeah, he eats with his hands. Doesn't have much kavanah, you know what I mean? He eats very quickly, not slowly. But when he's with people, he eats with a lot of grace. Right? And when he's alone, he eats like an animal. Perhaps it's the Chen Shel Sheker. What's the idea of the Chen Shel Sheker? You're trying to find grace in other people's eyes, but you're not emet to who you are really. You're pretending to create, you're creating a charlatan, essentially. And perhaps you speak to your friend in a very different way than you'd speak to your parents or the people that love you, whatever it is. This could be any single thing. When you're selling something to someone else versus someone else, perhaps you're speaking to someone who's giving to a shul who has more money than someone who doesn't. You know what I mean? All these inyanim are all Chen Shel Sheker. And that comes from a lack of Yirat Shamayim. So Rabbeinu says, and what happens when you fall into Chen Shel Sheker? What ends up happening is you end up making your Ashirut fall, which prevents you from falling into Arichut, which prevents you from getting into Arichut Amim, etc., etc. So sometimes the person can fall into Chen Shel Sheker, therefore damaging his Yirah, which is the opposite of Chen Sheker. Sometimes you can fall Chad Shalom into Yofi Anashim, therefore damaging your Chen Sheker, which then damages your Yira, and then damages your Ashirut. So all these things are connected with one another, as Rabbeinu was saying. But the main thing is that Ashirut Dusha is emet, is truth. So what does it say in the Biur HaLikutim? Let's see what he says over here. Something nice. שכיוון שתכלית היראה הוא להאריך את הימים. That the תכלית היראה is to lengthen a person's days. האנו שכל רגע ורגע מהיום יהיה בתוספת קדושה, that every single moment of the day you're creating additional holiness. ממילא גם בעמידתו ואכילתו מסחרו בכל פעולה שעושה, therefore by default all the things that you're going to do, whether you're standing up, whether you're sitting down, whether you're eating, whether you're doing selling merchandise, any task you're doing, הכל הוא לשם שמיים. Because you're putting אריכות ימים within every moment. And it's certain שיהיה מעורב שם חן של שקר, that חד ושלום, חן של שקר will not be mixed into there. Why? Because you're attaining אריכות ימים. It's the exact opposite. And this is the explanation and how it ties together בין ההרחקה הגדולה בחן של שקר לבין עניין אריכות ימים הבא לידי יראה. This is the connection that you might think that the difference between חן של שקר and אריכות ימים. But the truth is that אריכות ימים, if you really have אריכות ימים, there's no way that you're going to have חן של שקר in there. Because אריכות ימים is the idea of adding kedusha into every single moment. Not the opposite, which is to have ulterior motives. So there's all these inyanim with regard to this. Let's see what else it says over here. Look what it says in Gemara Kiddushin. Davar masur lalev, that which is given over to the heart. Ne'emar bo, it says about that in the pasuk in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 19, verse 32. Ve'yareta me'eleh elokecha, you shall fear from your God. Meaning what? That the heart has associated with it the concept of yira. Because that which was given over to the heart, which is hidden in the heart, it says about it, ve'yareta me'elokecha, you shall fear from Hashem. Meaning yira is associated with the heart. Demi sheyesh lo yirat shamayim, perush, meaning the one who has yirat shamayim be'emet, truthfully, alat tocho kefaro, his inside like his outside. Ve'en hu ma'amid panim ve'oseh chen shel sheker u'libo choshev acheret. That what? He's not presenting a different face with a chen shel sheker, and then in his heart he's acting differently. Exactly. He's one inside and out. Ki yareh me'Hashem yitbarach shehu yodea et ha'machshavot shelo, because he fears from Hashem that Hashem knows his thoughts. We see that what yirat shamayim is the opposite of chen shel sheker, which comes to a person because he's fallen to Yofi Anashim. So Yofi Anashim leads to chen shel sheker. But Rabbeinu is saying the way to protect all these inyanim is yirat shamayim. When you increase your yira, there's many things Rabbeinu explains to increase your yira. We're going to probably talk about it also. This protects a person from chad v'shalom, chen shel sheker and Yofi Anashim. I wanted to see if there's an inyan here. Maybe in the Papa Lo Chochma. Can I check this out 1 second? Let's see here. Papa Lo Chochma. By the way, the more we're going to get into this, we're going to see how this makes a lot more sense with regard to the subject and how Rabbi Natan explained the Likutei Halachot connects all this, because we're just studying it as like a Torah shebichtav in a sense. Rabbeinu is bringing all the proofs, but very hard to see practically how it makes sense until you enter the subject and you go be'iyum. So, see if, what do you call it? Let's see if he says anything here. So we're going to enter the inyan of Sarah. So let's see here. Something amazing here. I will translate what you read earlier with regard to Avraham Yitzchak and what the Papa Lo Chochma says. Therefore, in this we see the practicality in the Torah. Avraham Yitzchak, whose wives were Sarah and Rivka, they were very beautiful, we know, as the Torah teaches us, right? But they never were drawn after the physical beauty. When they came to those places that didn't have yirat shamayim, the second they entered that place, they felt that it was lacking. They felt the midah v'yirah being rid from that place. There was no yirat shamayim. Which places? Mitzrayim and Eretz Plishtim.
Yeah, when Avram went down, he says it like he noticed her beauty. It's
Exactly.
like she never knew. It's like
now we understand what Rabbeinu was saying. When there's a lack of yira, what ends up falling, that you fall into yofi anashim. Now Abraham never fell into yofi anashim by the fact that he saw the beauty was the proof that there was no yira because he never fell into the beauty before. So now we understand the greatness of Abraham Avinu. ותכף כשרצו לכנוס לשם הרגישו זאת, they felt this when they entered the land. על ידי שהתחילו להרגיש, and by the fact that they began to feel that emotion of physical beauty, meaning it now entered Abraham's, not maybe thought, but that he began to notice Sarah's beauty. What does that mean? And then he began to use all these strategies to hide her from the Egyptians, whatever it is. לפי ערך גודל קדושתם, by the great extent of their kedusha, yofi anashim, even with the great extent of the kedusha, they began to sense the yofi anashim, woman's beauty. As Avraham says, "Hine na yadati ki isha yefa ma'aret at." Now I know that you are a beautiful woman. You're a beautiful woman in appearance. Well, Avraham was how old at this point? And therefore, they felt that there was no yira, because if the fact that they're noticing yofi anashim, that means there's a problem with the midah of yirat shamayim. Therefore, they therefore forbade themselves from being with their wife, from having relations with their wife, as if it was their sister.
wow.
The same law as it would be literally a man cannot be with his sister. They felt the same way about their wife, that they would not be with their wife in that place. Because now they fell into yofi anashim. By default, it wasn't even their fault. But they fell into it, and now they did not want to be with their wife for their beauty. Can you imagine? It says about Abraham when he went to Eretz Plishtim. And Abraham said to Sarah, Ishto, Achoti, she's my sister.
Wow.
Now we
Good.
understand.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Because now I say that there certainly must be no fear of Hashem in this place. Meaning, Abraham was saying to Avimelech that what? The reason why this is Abraham explaining himself to Avimelech. After Avimelech told him, why didn't you tell me? Because he was explaining to him. The reason why I called Sarah my sister is because of the fact that I prevent myself from being with zivug with Sarah, because of the fact that what? That just like my sister is forbidden to me, I felt that there's now no yirat shamayim in this place, which then led to the fact that there's yofi anashim, and now that there's yofi anashim, I cannot be with my wife, just like she's forbidden to me, just like my sister's forbidden to me. So now I made it to me the comparison as if she's my sister, because she's forbidden to me. I cannot be with her. As long as there's no yirat shamayim in this place, which therefore means I'm focusing on the physicality rather than the pnimiyut, I cannot be with her.
Wow.
Which is an unbelievable inyan now, Rabban was explaining. So look what he says. Look what the Papa Chochmah says, Rabbi Nachman Mishavi. And he's explaining this concept. Say that you are my sister, right? That's what Abraham tells Sarah. Rabbeinu is explaining over here that Abraham Avinu forbade himself from being with his wife as if she was his sister, literally. And this is as he was coming down into Egypt. And the same is true after in the land of Plishtim, that later he revealed his reasoning as to why. Because he said now there's no fear of Hashem. The reason why I forbade her was because of the Yirat Shamayim. If there's no Yirat Shamayim, then the Yofi Anashim rises. If the Yofi Anashim rises, then I cannot be with my wife completely L'Shem Shamayim.
But the Yirat Shamayim wasn't but he went down to a place that didn't have it. Why?
You're right, it's not him, but he felt the sense. And because he felt it, just the area, the surrounding in himself created that change.
We're literally in LA.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
We're in Mitzrayim, so.
We're still. That's for sure. And the same is true with Yitzchak also.
When did he?
He explains within it, as it's brought down. Rabbeinu also brings the idea of Avraham and Yitzchak.
But Yitzchak never left Israel.
Yitzchak never left Israel, but he went somewhere, and it happened with Avimelech as well. No. That Avimelech saw him through the window with Rivka. There's a very interesting inyan with regard to that. I forget where it is, but I have to double check because I know this story happened with Yitzchak on this subject. I forget where. So what is Rabbeinu saying with regard to this? That it's not that they fell chas v'shalom into Hevel HaYofi. It's that because the air was so much filled with Hevel HaYofi, because their great holiness felt every single small, minute change, they felt that there was a gum in the area, and they could not be associated with it. So they completely put themselves in Yirat Shamayim. Meaning that because there was no Yirat Shamayim, they could not be with their wife.
Wow.
Crazy inyan here. So that's with regard to that. There. Okay. I'm going to close the door one second. Okay. Let me see one more piece maybe in the Torah Likutim. Sinyan. Do we see something? Let's see here. There's so many in here. Truth is, maybe we'll just, we'll probably just go through it as biyun as we can within the Sefer, and then after, once we finish the lesson as a whole, because we have the entire picture, we're going to go through the commentary, literally one specific commentary, and we'll go through it.
I love that. Yeah.
So let's do it like this. So,
you think because you're just like,
because there's so many pieces, and they're all scattered in the Torah Likutim. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many yanim here. I kind of want to just do, we're just going to do Biur Likutim and start from the beginning to the end, God willing. Yeah. And we'll really stick with this lesson, you know what I mean? Because this lesson's very deep. We'll do Likut Halachot, we'll stick with Likut Halachot, you know what I mean?
No, I love that.
At Likut Halachot. So we'll continue as biyun as we can within the Sefer, and then go through it, you know? Mm-hmm. So this is what Rabbeinu was saying. You can honestly finish off that piece. ואחר כך.
ואחר כך תיקן אברהם זאת והמשיך אריכות ימים כמו שכתוב ויגר אברהם בארץ פלישתים ימים רבים בחינת יראת השם תוסיף ימים כנען.
Exactly. So how did Abraham fix this when he felt that pgam in Yirat Shamayim, which therefore influenced the Hevel HaYofi, etc., Yofi Anashim? He fixed it when he was digging the wells, right, in the land of the Plishtim. And what did it say over there when he's digging the wells? Abraham lived in the land of the Plishtim Yamim Rabim for many days. What is Yamim Rabim? Many days.
We learned that before. It was in the day.
Is in the day, in the Inyan of Arichot Yamim. Because now Abraham was living in the land of the Plishtim, the land where there was no Yirat Shamayim, with Yamim Rabim, with great days, meaning which is Arichot Yamim, which is only possible through Yirat Shamayim, as we talked about. By that fact, he fixed it. Because when you have Arichot Yamim, by default, you have within it Yirat Shamayim. And Yirat Shamayim was mitaken the Hevel HaYofi, the Yofi Anashim. So look what he says here. B'chinat Yirat Hashem tosif yamim, and it says over there, the Yirat Hashem prolongs a person's days, tosif yamim, which is the idea of that Abraham lived in the land for many, many days. So, as you just mentioned above, the Yirat Shamayim is ma'arichat yamim, and it lengthens the days. Yeah, b'simcha, bro. b'simcha. Hamishim Abraham l'sham yirah she'alida zochim le'arichot yamim, that Abraham drew the concept of Yirah into the Eretz Plishtim, and by default of doing that, he merited Arichot Yamim. He drew Yirah, Arichot Yamim, by having the Arichot Yamim, he was able to mitaken the
So you're saying the longing of days brought Yirah, or his Yirah brought the longing? What was it?
The truth is, to get Arichot Yamim, you need Yirat Shamayim.
You need Yirat Shamayim.
So he brought the Yirat Shamayim, and therefore was able to mitaken the Arichot Yamim. Which is why it says he dwelled in there for many days. Yamim Rabim. Which is why the tzaddik always has to go into a very dark place to be able to be metaken certain things. Like, why Abraham had to go through so much suffering with his wife and all these things. But to repair, to elevate fallen Yirah. It's a very lofty concept. Why Sarah had to go to the palace of Avimelech to elevate the speech. Like, there's many Yamim Rabbeinu will bring down here why the tzaddik has to fall into a very big choshech and galut to bring out the nitzotzot of Kedusha from that place. When the tzaddik himself is relatively perfect, he's perfect, you know what I mean? He's shalem in his Yirat Shamayim, his Arichot Yamim, but he felt something there, and by default he separated himself from his wife until it was time to be mitaken the sinya, because he was with his wife completely Hashem Shamayim, which comes to teach us that these tzaddikim, in the Torah we speak about beauty in a lot of ways, right? Rachel Imenu, that she was beautiful, that Sarah was beautiful. We say Rivka was, like she was a beautiful woman also. All these, beauty, Mishle, Shir Hashirim. But all these things, these mentions of beauty, are never at the subject of the way we think of it, because we're so tameh. You know?
Yeah.
These tzaddikim were at such a madriga when Shlomo was writing Shir Hashirim is Kodesh Kodashim. Rabbi Akiva says all Kol Hashirim Kodesh. Shir Hashirim Kodesh Kodashim. All the Shirim are holy, but Shir Hashirim is the holy of holies. And it's funny because Rabbeinu says over there in Sichot Haran, Shir Hashirim, if you look at every single word, you cannot find a word that is explicitly holy. Shir Hashirim is literally purely, it's just like this analogy. There's not a single holy word in Shir Hashirim. At Lefi Pshat. And what did he say? Because the greatest holiness is extended to the place where you think there's no Kedusha. That's how they hide such Kedusha. The Kodesh Kodashim, the holiest of holies, has to be in a place where it's concealed from the eye. Mm-hmm. So these tzaddikim are able to retrieve very big secrets and very big jewels from places that are very dark. Which is why lots of very big souls come from very distant places. Like the Mashiach is going to come from the union of Lot and his daughter. Yeah. That Rizal brings down.
From Balak.
Huh?
From Balak.
Balak too? Oh, you're right. So there's all these how the biggest neshamot have to come through. Why David HaMelech has to be thought of, the son of, God forbid, a relationship out of wedlock. Yeah. It's crazy to even think, you know what I mean? And it has to come through such concealment. So Rabbeinu was entering the subject here to say that this tzaddik, Avraham Avinu, he himself never had a gam, it was just what do you call it? It was just because he felt a gam there that he knew he couldn't be with his wife anymore.
Like when you're saying the tzaddikim, like their whole thing is to fix the world. So they just feel it and they're like, okay, like we just need to fix this area.
You're right.
And it'll be fixed. That's what their intention is.
They put all their effort where they see there's something that needs to be fixed. So they go to a certain place because obviously everything Abraham did was he was walking with Hashem. Yeah. He telech lefanai ve'yetamim. Walk before me and you'll be tamim.
So it wasn't like Abraham was like, I'm gonna like hide myself here, like I'm gonna protect myself, be my force. He's like, no, I'm gonna go in there and actually fix the place. Okay.
The truth the truth is they never want to go. Like they never go there with like they're always sent by Hashem back to very strange places, very filthy places a lot of the time to be able to repair. I mean, I don't know. Like we could say at a physical level that David HaMelech writes in the Gemara Barachot. And Rabbeinu said this about himself also whenever he walked out of a certain city after traveling for many months. David HaMelech writes, "V'ani yadayim meluchlachot b'dam v'shapir v'shilya kedei letaher isha levala." That my hands are filled with blood, placenta, and all these sort of gross things to purify a woman to her husband. That the David HaMelech was consecrating halachot and going to very putting all his force and energy to purify the wife to the husband. What's the inyan? To purify the Shekhinah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The same is true of Abenu HaKadosh. Whenever he went from certain places, when he walked out, he said the same thing. What is the idea? Or when Rabbeinu went to a certain place, Latipali, and was there for a little bit of time and this and that, Rabbeinu said that was a tikkun for the Yeravam Ben Nevat. How Yeravam Ben Nevat placed the Egel Azah within...
Sorry, no, this is off topic. We'll take an example of like a place that Rabbi Nachman went to that was like so...
far from distant from Kedusha?
Yeah.
The second he landed...
Like a story or like...
There's so many things.
But like one, just one. Sorry, I know.
No. It's a very good one because it's a very important subject.
Yeah.
This idea of the tzaddik descending down to that place. When Rabbeinu was coming back from a certain place, I forget from a certain journey, he was with one of his talmidim, and he was walking past a place in Uman, or it could have been I forget where it was. It was a certain town in Ukraine where he was traveling on his carriage with his talmid. This was, I think, on his way back from Eretz Yisrael, where he was disguising himself because he wanted no one to recognize who he was. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening in this town was known for prostitution. So Azuna came to him and presented herself to him in a very inappropriate manner. Rabbeinu completely shunned it, and went on his way with the talmid, and he told the talmid, he said, just by the fact that I looked at that house in that place, just the fact that I had to go through here to look at the house, I'm comforted to know that there will never be anything bad that will ever happen there again. Just the fact that Rabbeinu had to drive past there in the carriage just to look at the house was the fact that he needed to go there to be presented in such a weird, strange situation, such a dirty situation, to repair that place. Why Rabbeinu, one night, he went to a certain place. There was a certain place in Ukraine. I forget all the towns. Like, there's Nemira.
So hard to mention.
There's so many different, you know what I mean, small towns that Rabbeinu went to and traveled to. Just the travel itself, Rabbeinu says, is a tikkun. That is a tikkun for Avodah Zarah. Rabbeinu says that traveling itself, a tzaddik shouldn't need to travel. It's a gam on his kavod. When Rabbi Levi Yitzchak ben Berdichev left his house, and Rabbeinu heard this, he told the students to get his tefillin checked. And they asked him why. Because he said, if Rabbi Levi Yitzchak ben Berdichev, who's the bait of tefillin, who's the house of the tefillin, the parchment of the tefillin, if he's leaving his home, then perhaps the parchment is leaving the bait, meaning that my tefillin is not kasher. Because it's not kavod for the tzaddik, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak ben Berdichev, to have to leave his home. Rabbeinu did this many, many times. One of the towns he went to, it was known at that place, there was no Jew allowed to stay overnight in the city quarters. So they all went to the suburbs and stayed over there, you know? Mm-hmm. One night, Rabbeinu disguised himself as a beggar, fully went to that place, and the next morning came out of there and told one of the students, you cannot come with me, you have to stay outside. He did an entire day there. He did an entire night there. The following day, he came out and told the student, you'll see that now the Jews will be allowed to go there. That week, they announced that the Jews were allowed to come live back there. For years, people weren't allowed to live there. Jews were not allowed to stay overnight and to sleep there overnight. There's many things like Rabbeinu had to do to filthy himself. Very good example. The machloket of the Shpul Azeda, the machloket of a very big chassid at that time, who created unrelentless machloket against Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman stayed silent the entire time, accepted all the busha.
Chassid?
Very big person. Aryeh Leb of Shpola. Rabbeinu said that at the end, unfortunately, Yetzer Hara disguised himself within this man and became knowledge of Shammai. But by the way, he has a big, like, not big chassidut, but like, he has a chassidut in a sense. Yeah, there's like people that, you know what I mean, that study like his books and stuff. Talking about, like, you know what I mean, crazy stuff, like so many different stories how the tzaddik has to kind of filthy himself. We see this in Sefer Tzaddik, we see this throughout history. Moshe Rabbeinu constantly taking the blame upon the Jewish people. So many interesting things. How, you know what I mean, Rabbeinu himself had to go through very dark circumstances, be attacked by a Turkish man when he went to Eretz Israel. He said that Turkish man himself is the Samech man. The Samech man came as this man and started attacking me. And Rabbeinu said, I have more pain than because this man was causing huge trouble with him for days on end, trying to kill him, then he was trying to be nice to him. And Rabbeinu said, I was more in pain when the man was nice to me than when he was mean to me, when he was trying to kill me. How the Samech man plays games to be nice, to give you a hug, to push you away. Like, crazy things, like, you know what I mean? How the tzaddikim have to go through such weird, strange circumstances.
Wow.
And Rabbeinu said, I have to suffer for many people. He said, the second a person comes to me, I feel immediately what they're feeling. The same way they're feeling it, I feel it. The sickness, the pain, the emotion, everything. Because for the tzaddik to be able to bring a tikkun, he has to go to that place and be there with you. That's how dirty it has to be. And it's a very difficult thing, because for a person to be at this madriga, like Rabbeinu speaks about this many times, to be at this level, it's very unique. It's called like the Baal Sadeh, the master of the field. To tend to the crops of each and every field, to tend to each grass, each thing, each blade of grass, each tree, each neshama needs tending to, needs care. And the tzaddik is constantly providing that attention. But he needs to be there with you, which is why he needs to suffer all the time. And from that suffering, he emerges b'simcha, victorious. So why Rabbeinu's entire Torah is the Bechin of Simcha, Nachman ben Simcha. There's so many things here that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the gloom, he emerges and transforms the gloom into Simcha itself. It's an incredible thing. But those are small things. There's many other stories, you know? Yeah. How Rabbeinu and many other tzaddikim had to do very dirty things to fall into there and to repair the nitzotzot. So, You wanna, let's see actually here, 52, 1 second. Let's see what it says here. So we were talking about, right? How did the Rabbi feel it if he himself had perfect Yirah? So when you go to a place without Yirat Shamayim, the tzaddik also feels that. It's mashpia on the tzaddik. It flows upon the tzaddik. That lack of fear, the tzaddik feels. As brought down Chaim Ora, when Rabbeinu went to Uman. So let's see.
About to give a story.
Exactly. Uman. When Rabbeinu came to Uman on the way back from Eretz Yisrael, this could be the same story, by the way. There was a test. As Rabbeinu was traveling from there quickly, I think it was this story about the prostitute. Rabbeinu began speaking zechut about the world, began finding good points in the world. Rabbeinu said like this: know that all our way, all the best of our way, the pathway, to know that there's tests in the world, with ease you can fall and stumble, God forbid. Rabbeinu said, oy vavoy, she'amat shama bar hagala, hevinu v'ra'u she'esh sham zenut b'niyuv gadol rachman litzlan. When the bar hagala, the wagon, the person running the wagon, the chariot, was standing there, we understood that there was zenut and niyuf happening.
What happened?
When the chariot was there and they were boarding the chariot and that wagon. What ended up happening is they understood that that town was filled with niyuf. Just by seeing it, about niyuf is sexual immorality, adultery, prostitution, God forbid, all this stuff. But what did Rabbeinu say? He found schut. He said, Bezrat Hashem yitbarach, with Hashem's help, there will be something good. There will be something good in this place. That there will be no more prostitution in that house over there.
Right.
Same story. Very funny thing. Rabbeinu became cooled off. Like he chilled out, he relaxed. Because he found zechut. So Rabbeinu has to go through all these dark places, these things. Talking about a tzaddik who has no tava. Rabbeinu said at the age of 13, he broke all his tavot. Food, money, sexual morality, no desire for women. Nothing. By the age of 20, his Yetzirah was a Malach Kadosh. We don't understand this, and yet when Rabbeinu was already at the age when he's back from Eretz Yisrael, at the age of 26, 27, and he's already back from Eretz Yisrael, imagine the Madriga is on. When Rabbeinu said he walked into Eretz Yisrael for a month, he said, no tzaddik before me has reached the Madriga that I've just reached right now because of these 4 months. It's a new concept. It's a yechid that we're talking about here. It's a new subject. And when he comes back to be presented with the biggest tava in the world, but the biggest filth in the world, and yet for Rabbeinu to find schut from that place. You know?
Yeah. It's different.
It's crazy. It doesn't make sense. For us, we'd be like, oh wow, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing. We beat the test. Like, for Rabbeinu, he's like, what just happened? Why would that there? Like, you know what I mean? There's all these inyanim that are happening in his head, and he has to do the tikkun of that place while he's going through, because every single step, there's a kavanah, a specific kavanah. We say even the divrei chol of the tzaddik, tzarich here. And in Ma'asukah, we say that even the mundane conversation of the tzaddik needs attention, needs detail, needs analyzing. Rabbeinu said, there's not a single breath I take that is not done without novelty. Same is true of Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, these tzaddikim. When they're doing something, every single step they do, every single machshava they have is b'kavanah tzuma. Where Rabbeinu said before he went to the land of Israel, this is before he attained the Madriga. He said, I cannot go to bed, I cannot go to sleep. And Sichot Arani writes this. I have a hard time falling asleep because the 600,000 letters of the Torah are constantly passing before my eyes. What are the 600,000 letters of the Torah? The Neshamot of Am Yisrael. 600,000 souls. Rabbeinu cannot go to bed because the souls are constantly passing before his eyes. They're asking tikkun, they're asking reparation and all these things. Why Rabbeinu had to be buried in Uman was because of tikkun. Thousands and thousands upon myriads of souls were killed there al Kiddush Hashem, and they still weren't finished. They needed a rectification. Rabbeinu said people have been waiting here for centuries, for years, hoping for this tikkun, and they're waiting on me. Rabbeinu knew what he had to go do. 6 months before he passed away, he knew he needed to go to Uman because that's where he needed to die. Everything was a sign from Hashem Yitbarach. Go to that place, go to this place, go to this place. He was sent from Hashem, literally like Avraham Avinu. And to go through such darkness and to come out victorious. Where Rabbeinu says at the end of his life, Nitzachti b'Hanatzeach. Gamarti be'egmor. I have finished, I will finish. I was victorious, I will be victorious. Because there's no loss. A person who's attached to the tzaddik never loses. Rabbeinu says there's never a person who was ever close to me that ever lost. You can never lose. You can only get better. You can only move forward. Mm-hmm. So, what does he say over here? We talked about this inyan of the Papa al Chokhmah that we mentioned earlier, and then so that's what we got to.
ואחר כך, ואחר כך קלקלו הפלישתים כל התיקונים שתיקן אברהם בחינה, וכל הבארות וכו' סיתמום פלישתים. Weiter?
We can translate. Afterwards, after Avraham Avinu passed away, the Plishtim damaged all the rectifications that Avraham had accomplished by infusing the land of the Plishtim with Yirat Shamayim, right? They undid all of it. What was the proof? That Avraham fixed all this with his Arichut Yamim, through his Yirat Shamayim, right? And which is why he had such great Ashirut in that place. But, as we saw with, whenever Yitzchak gets there, all the wells that Avraham had dug, all the waters that it saw that he had built, the Yirat Shamayim that he had built over there. That his father, that the servants of his father, during the days of Avraham Avinu, had dug, Sitmum Plishtim, the Plishtim had covered up. So the entire tikkun here is saw here with regard to the Be'erot, the wells. And what they're trying to make grow from within the wells. Why Avraham had to dig the well, this tikkun of Yira, Arichut Yamim, and all the dinanim, and how Yitzchak now comes and sees the place desolate. It's still lacking Yirat Shamayim, and now that's why Yitzchak feels the lack of Yirat Shamayim.
Okay.
So the Plishtim damaged the concept of Yira, Arichut Yamim, that Avraham had drew into that place.
ועל כן שבא יצחק לשם, הוא צריך גם כן לאסור זיווג כאחותו. כנ"ל עד אשר המשיך שם אריכות ימים שהיא בחינת יראה שמצלת מזה כנ"ל ואז הותרה לו כמו שכתוב והיא כאשר ארכו לו שם הימים וישקף אבימלך וכו'.
So this is it. Therefore, when Yitzchak came over there to the land of the Plishtim, he too needed to forbid himself from having a relationship with his wife, just like as if she was his sister, like the same way Avraham Avinu did it. This is why when Yitzchak came to this place within the land of the Plishtim, Grar, I think. What did he say? He said to Rivka that you should be my sister. He said that Rivka was his sister. That he prevented himself the same way Avraham Avinu did. וישאלו אנשי המקום לאשתו ואמר אחותי. The people of the place asked him, and he said, she's my sister. Same response. Until Yitzchak drew into that place Arichut Yamim once again. Which is what? The Bechin Avira, which is literally the Midah Yitzchak, by the way, because Yitzchak is Gvura, and Yira comes from the side of Gvura. Shematel Midah, and Yira prevents a person from falling into Yofi Anashim, from falling into a lack of Yirat Shamayim. So what we talked about, Yira protects a person from this. Protects a person's wealth, protects a person's, vision. All this idea. And then, his wife became permitted to him, as he saw the Yira had been repaired. As it says in the Pasuk, as his days were lengthened, meaning what? He attained Yira. What did Abimelech see? He saw him and his wife together through the window. You see?
That's good. That's good.
Abimelech saw, the king of the Plishtim saw who? Yitzchak through the window.
So you're saying he told him, this is my sister.
To prevent himself.
Prevents himself. But then once he had did the tikkun, then he's like, oh wait,
permitted.
That's how he knew.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then what did it say? And what did it say? That Abimelech saw him through the window, this and that, and he saw that Yitzchak was joking with his wife Rivka.
Yeah.
What does Rashi say? He saw him sleep with his wife, Abimelech, through the window. Yeah. And the pasuk emphasizes that what? As his days were lengthened over there, Meaning what? The only reason why he was able to be with his wife in the first place, now the tikkun had been accomplished, was because he attained Arichut Yamim. Through the Yirat Shamayim, he drew within that place. Because Yirat Shamayim is the key to attain Arichut Yamim. Yirat Hashem, Tosif Yamim. The fear of Hashem adds days. Now that you have the Yirat Shamayim, you add Arichut Yamim into your days. Yirat Shamayim is the key to attain Arichut Yamim. When he attained Arichut Yamim, he was permitted to his wife now. That he drew Arichut Yamim into that place. So what did Rabbi Natan say in Likutei Halachot about this subject? Why the be'erot? What does it have to do with the wells? The Avot who began to reveal godliness into the world, the perceptions of Hashem, they constantly engage in digging wells. What's the idea here? This is the revelation of Hashem's godliness, the wells, revealing the water from within the depth of the earth. This is why the Plishtim sealed the wells, which is the Bechin of Yirat Shamayim. They wanted to damage the tikkunim that Yitzhak or Abraham had done by revealing the godliness of Hashem, which is Yirat Shamayim. That Abraham had drawn into the world by digging those wells. Yitzhak went back and started redigging them. This is why the main beginning that the Jewish people had in drawing close to their Father in heaven started with what? What is it? Tfilat mikveh. It starts with Tfilat mikveh, which is the idea of digging the water from under the place, from under the earth. Because anyone who wants to leave Tumat to Tara has to go dip in the mikveh. This is why Rabbeinu said the first Bechina P'gam Brit, which is the idea of Yofi Hanashim. Because P'gam Brit always stems from this Bechina of Hebel Yofi Hanashim. All this idea of finding the vein being, the beauty too much to be important, and that really in truth it's vain. But that you focus on it too much, which Bechina leads into P'gam Brit and all these inyanim. Is the tikkun for that is obviously Yirat Shamayim, which is the Bechina of digging the well, which is the water, which is the mikveh. So like Rabbeinu says, first thing is is mikveh. The first thing a person does when Chad v'Shalom he has a nocturnal mission or has a gun, first thing go to the mikveh. Because the mikveh is mitaken, all that place.
Wait, so is ways you can continue with the wells?
The wells, it says look over there. Look
I don't really understand the whole
how the wells have to do with the Inyan of Yirat Shamayim. We actually have to look into the Likutei Halachot.
But he says look somewhere else.
He says Ayen Sham Bifnim, look over there.
Yeah.
You have to look in Yoreh De'ah. Because he's going to bring the entire subject of how it connects to the wells and all this idea. But there's many inyanim. With regard to the be'erot, off the top of my head, do I know something that has to do with Yirat Shamayim? Let's just say that the revealing of the perceptions of Hashem or revealing Hashem's godliness in the world starts with Yirah. Because you cannot get to reveal Hashem with starting with Ahava. The first thing is Yirah Kodemet. As Rabbeinu teaches us in lesson 5, that Yirah must proceed. So to bring someone perception of Hashem, it has to start also with the Bechina of Yirah. Which is why we always start with Yirat Tzchar ve'onesh. Fear or Yirat ha'onesh, fear of punishment, all these things, because you cannot get to a greater ahava, the yirah must proceed, which is why a man must always go searching for his wife, because the man is ahava, the woman's yirah, which is why you have to go searching for her, because once you get the yirah, then you obviously have the ahava, then you're complete. There's lots of inyanim here. I'm sure there's much more depth to with regard to this idea of the be'erot. Let's see what it says over here. So we see the same thing with what do you call it? With Yitzhak, that he saw people began to focus on the beauty of the woman, which is then why he forbade himself, and etc., etc., etc. And what Rashi says with regard to what happened with Avimelech, etc., etc., etc. Let's see over here if there's something. Okay. Where is it? Where are we right now?
I think Ve'al Yedei.
Okay, yeah.
ועל ידי זה שהמשיך אריכות ימים זכה שם לעשירות, כמו שכתוב, ויזרע יצחק בארץ ההיא וימצא בשנה ההיא 100 שערים, וכו' כנ"ל, כי מי שאין לו יראה ואין נשמר במכינת הבל היופי, על ידי זה בא לעניות, כמו שכתוב, אל תחמור יפייה בלבך, כי ועד אישה זונה עד כיכר לחם.
So, by doing this, by drawing the Arichut Yamim, which is the concept of Tikkun Atik, which is the rectification of Atik, we talked about the 13 Midot HaRachamim, the 13 Devoshei Torah, you know what I mean, all these Inyanim, the beard. With this, Yitzchak was able to merit Ashirut. As it says over there in the Pasuk, Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz ha'i, Yitzchak planted over there, in that land. Vayimtza b'shana ha'i mea she'arim, he found 100 gates in that year. What does that mean? It's 100 gates. It's a Bechina of Arichut Yamim. Ashirut, Ikdusha, Shemena ba'im nidbonenut. And through this idea, what is Sharim? Noda b'sharim bala. Noda b'sharim bala. It was known, her husband was known to her at the gates. נודע בשם בשבטו עם זקנה ארץ.
זה all נשיכה.
all the עניין ואשתך, למרות שזה עניין ביופי אנשים, but in the עניין קדושה, repairing all this idea of יראה, נודע בשערים. So, באמצע בשערים 100 שערים, gates. So what does it say over there, נודע בשערים? But I think it says, כל מד כפום דמשל בליבה. Everyone according to how much he can measure in his heart. The idea of התבוננות. So you tie it back full circle. What are שערים? שערים or שערים of התבוננות? It's not mentioned here, but this idea that Sharim Noda Basharim Ba, like Kfum Madim Shar Belibe. According to Kfum Ma Kol Madim Shar Belibe. I forgot the idea. To each and every person according to what he can measure in his heart, meaning how big his kli is. How much Arichut Yamim you have, which then in turns affects how much Hibonenut you have, how much Ashirut you have, how much Hibonenut you have. All this idea. So Yitzchak merited that holy wealth because he attained Arichut Yamim and drew into the land of the Plishtim. So now after Rabbeinu just explained how from Yirah we get to Osher, etc., how Yitzchak had brought the Yirat Shamayim, the Arichut Yamim, and then to Ashirut. Now Rabbeinu is going to explain when there's no Yirah and you begin to desire a woman's vain beauty, God forbid, you fall into poverty through this. Now we're going to tie in the other part of the section that we mentioned earlier, which is how Yirah is the opposite of Aniyut, or how Ashirut is the opposite of Aniyut, poverty. How wealth is the opposite of poverty, and how having a lack of Yirah can make you fall into poverty. Now Rabbeinu is going to explain that subject. Okay. So if we had a question on that, now he's going to go into it. So he says, I think you read the first line, right? At Kikar Lachem, right?
Yeah.
So let me translate that. Because one who does not have Yirah, meaning even Yirat HaOnesh, even fear of punishment, etc., he's not guarded from the concept of Hevel Yofi, vain beauty. Meaning he's not protected from the desiring of a woman's physical beauty. And through this he comes into Aniyut, he falls into poverty. Why is it that he falls into poverty? It says, do not desire her beauty in your heart. Do not desire her beauty in your heart, it says in Mishlei. Because the Adi Shazona ad kikar lachem, as it says over there. Because on behalf of this impure woman, this immoral woman, licentious woman, ad kikar lachem, I will taste the loaf of your bread. What's this idea? That Chad v'Shalom falling into Isha Zona, this idea of Gamamrit, Chad v'Shalom will affect your parnasa, your kikar lachem, your ashirot. Because of the Isha Zona, ad kikar lachem, you will fall into poverty. So what's his idea? So what did he say? By the fact that you desire the woman's physical beauty, you at the end fall into anyut, poverty, and you lack everything that is good. Meaning what? So now Rabbeinu is going to explain how that's possible. But let's see what Rashi says. Let me see what Rashi says. I will do it after. I will do that piece after. I have no idea. I have no idea. So let's see what it says over here. Okay, so when you're not guarded from when you don't have Yirat Shamayim, Yirat HaOnesh, Yirat HaOnemut, and you're not guarded from Hevel HaYofi, tout de suite ante aniut. And it says, Al tachmod yofa bivavech. Do not desire her beauty in her.
What was the line again with the lechem? It was from Yisrael.
So exactly. So kiva ad isha zona ad kikar lechem.
Okay.
On the half of the license of Shlumin, ad kikar lechem. How did I translate over there? I wrote over there. Did I?
You wrote come.
My handwriting is very tough, bro.
It's just small.
It's very small.
One will something a harlot for an account for her beauty.
Yeah.
Something.
You'll lose your loaf of bread or something on account of the harlot's beauty.
Yeah.
How long do you want to continue? Or do you want to...
Yeah. I'm gonna fix it.
I'm down to go ahead. Should we move room?
Yeah.
Alright, second.
I think they're doing mincha every third.
Huh? No, כן, כי רוצים לעשות, עושים שיעור עכשיו. So let's see. כי השירות הוא לפי מה שאני אברהם, כי השירות הוא מלכות הנשימה. I'm trying to see, wait a second. Let me go check the other one. The other
I
one.
saw two other people there before time continued. But they could be gone.
Okay, it's fine, let's just continue.
It was like a young kid and a rabbi. Well, didn't you say we always have to get tested?
Yeah, בוודאי. יש תואר ברבנות, so it's like, you have to be very smart. Okay. So, מודיעו המגירה, לאינו נשמע מבחינת הבל היופי, and you're not guarded from הבל היופי, על ידי זה בא לעניות, to this you fall into עניות, poverty. Don't desire al tachmod. This is the idea of lo tachmod, the idea of coveting something, of beauty in the heart. This idea of הבל היופי, chem dafer yofi anashim. Okay. So now you're gonna go, כי השירות.
כי השירות והבל היופי הם שני הפכים. כי השירות הוא מריחות הנשמה ויופי הוא מהפסק הנשמה.
It's crazy. So this is what he says here. כי השירות והבל היופי, for wealth and הבל היופי, are two opposites. Wealth and vain beauty are two exact opposites. Why? Because ashirut, wealth, comes from arichut haneshima. It comes from the length, extended breath. Extended breath. What? That through the luchot. So he's going to explain all this idea after the luchot and all this idea. And what is yofi? Beauty comes from hefsek haneshima, when you have a pause in breath, when you have a lack of air, lack of ruach. Yeah.
Like you took my breath away?
Yeah. Oh wow. That's a sod, by the way, for sure.
Yeah.
On the idea of yofi anashim. That's for sure a sod. That's for sure a sod. That's actually amazing. Yeah, yofi shel
Wait, so you're
habaran
saying the long breath is
is the idea of what? Ashirut.
ashirut, and then the short breath is for the
Is
heaven.
yofi anashim, which are the two opposites.
Okay.
כי בשעת יציאת שיופי של הבלה נקבע לפי הפסק הנשימה שהיה בשעת הדיבור. So yeah, continue.
אל תחמוד יפיפה.
יופי הוא מהפסק הנשימה.
כי בשעת יציאת הטיפה זריות, אזי צריך להיות הפסק הנשימה משני טעמים. א', כדי שלא יתקרר הטיפה על ידי הנשימה, שהוא האוויר הקר, שמקבל בכל רגע מבחוץ, כי צריכה לצאת בחמימות, כדי שתהיה ראוי להולדה. וב' כי מחמת שעושה כוח הדוחה להוציא ולדחות הטיפה, על כן הוא בהכרח הפסק הנשמה, כי הנשמה הוא מציח רוח המכניס רוח, ומחמת שעושה כוח הדוחה לדחות הטיפה אי אפשר להוציא הרוח, על כן הוא הפסק הנשמה.
So now Rabbeinu is going to explain why. Why one's a pause breath, why one's an extended breath. Because at the time when the drop of seed leaves the body, when a person's with his wife, the man needs to have hefsek aneshima, a pause breath, for two reasons. The first reason is that so that the drop does not chad v'shalom get cold. Why? Because the breath, air is cold. The breath in itself has a bechinat coolness. So why need to have a hefsek aneshima? Because if it's too cold, the zera won't have enough koach. Okay, that's like, this is very big. Okay. What is it? What's the breath? That all the cold air that you're receiving every single moment from the outside, from the external. All the oxygen you're bringing in, all that is cold air. You feel the cold air when you breathe in, right?
Yeah.
Because you need the tipa to go out with heat. Because then it has the koach to affect whatever it needs to affect, to bring a child down into the world. So that it's fitting to impregnate the woman. The second reason, because now the extracting, the force, it's pushing out the tipa. That force, it needs to be in this fact of hefsek neshima, a paused breath or a seized breath. Why? Because the neshima motzi ruach or machnis ruach. Because the breath, what is breath? Bringing in ruach, exhaling. Inhale, exhale. And because of the fact that you're this koach hadochel lidchot hatipa, because this pushing force is engaged right now to push out the drop. It's impossible for that strength to bring out that ruach. It's impossible for that natural force within you to push out that ruach. It's impossible for it to push out the drop and the ruach too, which means breath in itself has to be paused. It cannot be inhale, exhale. It has to be just inhale at one point. It cannot be exhale too, because it's pushing out. It's using all the energy to push out the drop of seed. It cannot be using your energy to push out your air too. That's why you're gonna have a pause of breath.
It's still alive.
It's very deep. This is why it is a paused breath. Pausing out. We can do one more line and then let's see how we can summarize. We can also go back and do this. You see that?
וזה הרוח מההבל שנכנס מקודם ונשאר שם. הוא מתלבש בכוח הדוחה. על ידו יוצא הטיפה לחוץ, וכפי זכות וזכות הבל. כן הבאה.
Yeah, because if we do that, I think we're going to enter the next inyan. So let's see what it says here. This ruach and this hevel, this air, this mist that a person's breathing, that enters before the drop goes out, and it stays there, that ruach that stays in your body, that you just took it, before the drop comes out, that breath is being enclosed and like intertwined within the strength that is the pushing force within your body. But how did I call it koach hadoche? Because it's probably a better word. The first time you see koach hadoche, I probably translated something.
The ejaculatory force.
Yeah, okay. The force to push something out, essentially. Now that force, what's being enclosed within it? The ruach that you took in just before you ejaculated the seed, the drop. And that air is what pushes it out. The air which you took in just before is the thing that pushes it out. Which is why you have hefsek neshima, because you cannot bring in air and exhale the air. So you're going to have to inhale without the exhaling. And then without the exhaling there, what's the exhaling happening to? The pushing of the seed. That's what Rabbeinu was saying for two reasons why I cannot. Because the
How did we get to this again?
Because so now Rabbeinu is
I'm
explaining
trying to remember, yeah.
pause breath and extended breath.
Okay.
Arichut yamim, ashirut is extended.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And now hefsek neshima, pause breath, or when your breath is like when you have short breath, short breath, which is a very thing which is connected to this idea, but you have short breath that can lead to, it can be indicatory of where you stand with your beit kodesh and all these inyanim. But the short breath has to do with what do you call it? For two reasons. When you're with the zivug. Because it's too cold. If you take in, if it's too much full breath, you're unfortunately going to cool off the drop of seed, making it unable to perform its task. And the second thing has to be half breath with an inhale without an exhale, so that the air that you just took in can be used now to push out the drop. And you cannot use that force to push out for both the seed and for your air.
So it has to be plural.
Has to be we'll go back to this because it's halachot on it, sefer amidot on it. I want to do this. But let's let's pause.
אוקיי,
there.
מינוטו, one second.
מוכפי. שינה?
Yeah.
אז עכשיו אני לא למדתי שום דבר.
I think we'll do the liquid next time.
Yeah.
So, בעזרת השם. Thank you.